What's up, sports bettors? I have three player props on Underdog Fantasy, and I figured we'd just do a quick video and go through them. So, again, this platform, the way it works, it's technically a fantasy site, is it is a parlay only sports book. So, what you're going to notice is any three picks you select, you're going to be getting a 6x multiplier. So, you're going to be betting $1 to win six. Doesn't matter if you take overs, unders, doesn't matter if you switch out a pick for a college football pick, it's always going to be one to win six. So we've gone through the math before, but they try to make their payouts confusing. That's really what they're trying to do. They're not posting odds, so you don't really know how this platform is trying to make money off you. But essentially, what we've gone through in a bunch of other videos is that when you're betting on a three-leg parlay, where every pick would have the same odds, $1,000 or $1 to win six, you're getting the implied juice of minus 122. So when you're playing on Underdog Fantasy in a three pick entry, you are getting minus 122 odds, right? So what you're going to notice is basically all of my plays on Underdog Fantasy are three pick or five pick entries, as you can kind of see right here. It's all going to be three pick or five pick. And that's because you're getting much better implied odds than in two pick entries. In two pick entries, you're getting minus 137. In three pick, it's minus 122. So, anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into the plays. I'm looking for value at minus 122. So, the first tool I always pull up is the EV tool, right? The OddsJam positive expected value tool. So, all this tool does is it goes to Underdog Fantasy, it scans the tens of thousands of odds on this platform, as well as every sports book, right? So it's updating millions of odds every second, and then it just points out the biggest discrepancies. It points out the value. There's no BS about, oh, Zubak, had an argument with his dad, so he's going under. There's no BS, right? It's just data. You have all these sports books posting odds on the exact same bet. It's like having hundreds of different prices for a stock. It doesn't really make sense, right? So FanDuel is telling you, hey, Zubak over 11.5 rebounds should be minus 150. Caesars, minus 163. DraftKings, minus 145. Underdog Fantasy, again, we don't want to play two pick entries because we're getting much worse implied odds at minus 137. But since we're playing it in a three pick, we're getting minus 122. Don't place two pick entries on Underdog. Promise me you won't do that. No two picks, no four picks, three or five, right? They try to make their payouts confusing. You got to educate yourself. They're not going to tell you how they're trying to make money off you or if it's mathematically optimal to place three pick or two pick entries. You got to figure that out yourself, right? They're not trying to teach you how to bet. They're trying to make money off you. So, anyways, we know we're getting minus 122 implied odds. So you kind of look at all the data in the market. It's like, okay, Pinnacle, sharpest bookmaker in the world. They're pricing this at minus 160. So we're getting a ton of improvement, 38 cents, right, of improvement from Pinnacle, the sharpest bookmaker in the world. DraftKings, they're less bullish. They're less aggressive on the over. All these books set lines independently, right? So DraftKings is less aggressive on the over for Zubak since they only have the over juiced to minus 145, right? So Pinnacle is a lot more juiced on the over than DraftKings. But you kind of look at the market and it's like, Pinnacle, sharpest bookmaker, says this is worth minus 160. DraftKings, minus 145. Caesars, minus 163. FanDuel, minus 150. Seems pretty dang good at minus 122, right? That's kind of how you think as a sharp sports bettor. All these books set lines independently. So I didn't wake up today and say, hey, I want to bet on Zubak rebounds. I said, okay, I know that Underdog Fantasy is going to be posting tens of thousands of odds. I know that everything on their site is minus 122 in a three pick entry, so I just need those rare few betting opportunities where I can actually have an edge at minus 122. I don't need to bet on every game. The reason I'm going with Zubak is because that's what the math is telling me. That's what the market is telling me. You don't have to know anything about basketball. You don't have to know anything about the Clippers. You don't have to know anything about this guy, Zubak. I can't even pronounce his first name. All I know is I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sports books all telling me this should be priced around minus 155, minus 160, and I'm getting minus 122. I'm following the data. These sports books invest hundreds of millions of dollars into their ability to set lines, and also sportsbook odds just like the price of a stock, reflect supply and demand. If every sports bettor in the world started hammering his over, this line on FanDuel, if everyone was betting the over on FanDuel, it would move from minus 150, minus 160 to minus 170 to minus 180, right? So it's supply and demand. So the opinions of the millions of people betting on the NBA tonight are reflected in the odds. So I'm day trading sports. You got to move quick to get down some of the best plays. This is kind of like day trading, right? You're moving fast to pick off underdog fantasy when they're screwing up big and giving you a ton of value, right? There's a ton of value at minus 122, as you can kind of see in the market. So that's the first play I went with. But remember, we need two more. So there are a lot of strategies. I say this all the time, but the EV tool I use because it compares prices, right? So essentially, like you can imagine, there's 5 different prices for the same stock. Zubac over 11.5 rebounds, the same asset. There's no difference in how this bet is graded. Like, you definitely shouldn't be placing your bet on Pinnacle at minus 160 if you can get it minus 145 on DraftKings. Like, this bet is the exact same thing. It just has different prices on all these different sports books. But now that sports betting is mobile, everything's a tab click away, right? So, like, you definitely shouldn't be betting this minus 163 on Caesars if you can be getting minus 145 on DraftKings or minus 122 on Underdog, because you're getting ripped off. And as a sharp sports bettor, you're like a savvy investor. You got to find value. So, we have a bunch of videos kind of breaking down how to back out the profit margin or the edge on this play. But basically, this bet has a 3% profit margin based on where the market, the consensus is, based on where sportsbooks are setting lines, and we're getting minus 122. This play has a 3% edge, 3% profit margin. And a lot of people are like, 3% profit margin, who cares? But, as I say, I use this verified bet tracker. It's called Pickit. Is you got to remember this 3% ROI is daily, right? Like in sports betting, the stock market, cool, it goes up 8% a year. If you can have 3% edge on a bet and you can earn a 3% ROI every day, that's 90% a month. So you're basically doubling your bankroll every month, right? So this is the first play I went with. And again, the EV tool is really good for comparing prices, but what I use the screen for is stuff like this, right? Like you can see right here, Jeremy Schoen. His line for rebounds is 6 on Underdog. It's 5.5 on Prize Picks, their direct competitor. It's 5.5 on all the sports books. Granted, the sports books have the over slightly favored. Over 5.5 is minus 135 on DraftKings. The under is plus 105. So sure, books have the over 5.5 favored, but being able to get under 6, Underdog is too high, right? They're 0.5 rebounds higher than their direct competitor Prize Picks and the rest of the market. So maybe there's some value in taking the under. They're too high relative to the rest of the market. And we have 1, 2, you have hundreds of sports books posting odds on this bet. So you have hundreds of bookmakers all telling you, hundreds of data points all telling you, Jeremy Schoen, his rebound line should be 5.5. So I use the screen to kind of quickly compare lines and be like, okay, here, Underdog's at 7 for Zion. All the books are at 7.5, but granted, the sports books have the under 7.5 pretty freaking juiced. Caesars has this minus 163. So maybe we want to hold off because getting over 7 doesn't seem particularly great when the under 7.5 is minus 163 on a sports book. Does that make sense? If not, you can feel free to comment questions, but that's kind of how I think about sports betting. And again, this market's dynamic. So I'm constantly hunting through the market, kind of shifting between the EV tool and the screen. The screen lets you, again, compare lines set at different levels. I'm like, okay, where are there differences like this play, where Underdog's at 6 and all the books are at 5.5? However, when books are set at the same level, then the EV tool is useful because you want to compare prices. Screen compares lines. Where are books setting the lines? The EV tool compares prices. So that's the first play I went with. Zubac, not following my gut, following the frickin' data, right? That's how you make money. Sports betting. Stop trusting your gut. 99.9% of sports bettors trust their gut, which is why they lose money long term. And if they tracked their bets, they'd realize that. But this is the first play I went with. Next, I went with Evans under 4.5 receptions and Smith Schuster under 5.5 receptions. And you can see these plays here. And again, if the plays have moved, good bets don't last forever. I'm sorry. The purpose of these videos is not only to help you have profitable picks that hopefully you can tail, but also to educate you. How can you beat the sports books? They're not going to teach you how you can beat them. Underdog Fantasy doesn't have a course on how to beat them and what's mathematically optimal to do on their platform. That is not in their best interest. They don't teach you how to bet. They don't want anyone teaching you how to bet, which is why, OddsJam is a very interesting company because we actually help sports bettors actually learn how to bet. But anyways, hopefully this is helpful. Let's make money.